Okay. So we have to start with 3A and 3B program. So 3A program, let's see the program. The question for the 3A program is write a Java program to read two integers A and B. So two integers are said to be A and B. Compute A divided by B and print when B is not 0. Raise an exception when B is equal to 0. When we are having two numbers A divided by B in the division operation, numerator and denominator we are having, no? If denominator is equal to 0, whatever the denominator we are having, if it is equal to 0, then what happens? We are not able to compute in the program because the result is infinitive. Infinitive is not possible to display as a output. In that case, what happens? We have to throw a exception. So we have to throw a exception, otherwise the software will be get crashed. So to avoid that software crash, what we have to do is we have to create a exception handling mechanism. So exception handling mechanism mean by what? So if it is divided by 0, we have to try the code inside the try block. If there is an exception, then the exception will be thrown to the catch block. Catch block will do what? It will catch the exception and display there is a error in this particular place. So check the code like that. It will throw the exception. So in the exception, we can print divide by 0 exception, or we can print the denominator is 0. Like that, we can show the output to the end user. So the end user will correct the error. For that reason, we are going for exception mechanism. The major advantage, we are having lot of exceptions. We are having file not found exception. File not found exception mean by what? We are having a file in a particular location and we are trying to read the file from the location through our code. When we try to read the file is not exist inside the folder, means it will show a exception as file not found exception. So array index out of bound exception we are having. Array index out of bound exception mean by what? I'm having the array size of the array is 2. So 0 and 1 we are having as the size of the array. I'm trying to insert a value in A of 5. A of 5 is not there in the array. The size of the array A is 0 and 1. We are having the size as 2. I'm trying to insert the value at A of 5. A of 5 is nowhere exist. So it will show a exception. It's an error actually. In that time, we have to show a exception. So these types of exception will be handled by try block, and that will be throw the exception to the catch block. So catch block will catch the exception and display the output. Okay. So as per our given question, we have tried a Java program with two integers A and B, and we have to do the division operation. In the division operation, if the B value, the denominator value B value is 0, means it have to show the exception. It have to show the exception, and we have to display the thing as the denominator is 0, so it's not possible to do the division operation. Like that, you have to show the output to the end user. So what is the major use of exception? The software crash we can avoid. So when you're making a big project, if your code get any input as infinity or any input as denominator as 0, it can stop the execution and it will just throw the exception. So what happens here exactly? In this particular code, we are just doing A divided by B, no? A divided by B we are doing. So C is equal to A divided by B we are doing, no? If there the denominator B is 0 here, means it will stop the execution here. It will not go for the next statement. So statement line number 20, it will not execute. It will stop at line number 19 and it will throw the exception to the catch block. Okay, so catch block will just print invalid input for B, like that. It will just display the input. So what and all we have to do for doing this particular program, let's see in detail. So we have to create a package name, package daa.lab. So this is the package name we are having. So we are having the input package, the that is imported from the Java generic package as io.asterisk. So this is the particular package what we are having. So in this package, we can able to get the input from the user. We have to get A and B values from the user. For that reason, this particular package is used for. So io.asterisk. Next to that, we are using the scanner package. The scanner package is accessed from java.utl.scanner. Java.utl.scanner. We are just accessing the particular inputs. We have to get next float. Next float is the decimal value we have to get from the particular user. For that, we have to use next float. If you are taking integer, we have to use next int. If you are using string, we have to use next. So you have to create the object for scanner generic class, scanner space scan, and you have to give system.in. System.in, system is a generic class, in is the statement you have to use for getting input. If you are using if you are trying to display the statement as output in the output screen, you have to use system.out. So in this case, we are using this particular statement. Next to this, first input we are getting from the user, enter the value for A. Enter the value for A we are getting from the user. So that particular A value is in decimal value, so that we are using float A equal to scan.nextFloat. So scan.nextFloat will just get the input from the user and it will store in the variable A. Next to that, enter the value for B we are getting. So B value will be entered by the user, that will be stored in float B. Okay. So A and B we are just getting from the user and we are just storing in the variable A and B. Keep in mind, we are getting decimal value. You can get integer value also, but that will be converted to decimal value. Mean by if you are giving 2, 2 will be stored as 2.0. Okay. The same way, if you are giving 5, 5.0 will be stored in B. Okay. So whatever the input you are giving, that will be converted to float and it will be stored there. Now we are checking the condition if B not equal to 0. If B not equal to 0, whatever the B value, if it is not equal to 0, it will do this operation. So what the operation will do? C is equal to A divided by B. So for example, A value if I entered 4, B value if I entered 2, 2 not equal to 0, condition is true. So it will just come here and do this particular process. C is equal to 4 divided by 2. So 4 divided by 2, it will be 2. So C value will be 2. That will be displayed as output. The division of A and B is 2. It will be displayed as output. If this condition is false, if the condition is false, if B value is 0, so what happens? It will go to the else part and just throw the exception. So what the exception will throw? A new exception to create an object. Exception is a generic class. Throw is a keyword. Keep in mind, try, throw, catch, all these things are keywords. So throw whatever we are having, the throw will be just throw the exception statement. So B cannot be 0, that's the exception statement. That will be thrown to the catch block. So invalid input for B, B cannot be 0. So in this place, e.getMessage, what it will get is, it will get the exception here. So whatever the exception we have the statement, that statement will be displayed as output. So e.getMessage will just display the statement as B cannot be 0. So you have to keep in mind what and all the way we can able to catch the exception from the given code. So exception is a generic class. For that we are creating object in the catch block. So we are just using e.getMessage. So e.getMessage will just display the content what we are having in the throw block. Okay. Throw is to throw the exception from the catch block. So catch block will catch the exception and display the exception as output. Okay. When B is 0, it's not possible to do the division. It will just catch the exception and it will just throw the exception to the catch block, and catch block will just display the statement as invalid input for B, and B cannot be 0. These are the things it will display. Okay. So we will just execute this code and check out what the output it's displaying. So let's see the output for this program. So I'm asking for A value I'm entering as 4 and B value I'm entering as 2. So this is the normal execution, and the normal execution is displaying the output as the division of A and B is 2.0. So it's just displaying a value. Enter the value for a, it's displaying as 4. Enter the value for b, it's displaying as 2. The division of a and b is 2.0. Okay, this is the thing it's going on. Next to this, we have to check out by giving the b value as 0. In the place of 2, you have to give 0. In this time, what the output we are getting, let's check it out. So let's run this code. So enter the a value I'm giving as 4 and b value I'm giving as 0. So when you are giving 0, it will just display the output as invalid input for b. That is the statement what we are having in the code, that will be displayed as it is. What you are giving in the catch block, invalid input a for b, whatever you are giving, that will be displayed as it is. The next one, what you are giving here, b cannot be 0, that will be retrieved from the throw block. Throw will throw this statement. This statement will be retrieved by the exception e dot get message. It will just retrieve and display the output. B cannot be 0 will be retrieved from the exception. So you will get these two statements as output when you are executing this current code. Students, any doubts, please ask me. Any doubts, students? Any doubts are you having?
Sir, tell else part once again.
So else part, we are throwing the exception. Throw keyword will throw the exception from the try block to the catch block. So in the throw, we are just passing a parameter. The parameter is what the exception statement we have to throw to the catch block. The exception statement, we are creating the object for the generic class exception, new exception we are creating, and we are just writing the statement as b cannot be 0. This is the statement we are throwing from try block to the catch block. So we are closing the else part. So else part will execute and that will throw the exception to the catch block. So catch block will receive the exception. Here we are creating the object for the generic class exception. So through this object, we can able to access the message by using the predefined method called get message. So get message is the predefined method. With use of this get message, we can able to retrieve the content. So here it will just display b cannot be 0. And here in the previous statement, we are just displaying invalid input for b with use of system.out.println. So it will be displayed as it is, what you are seeing in the output statement. And down, b cannot be 0 will be retrieved from the throw statement. Did you got it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's go for the second program, 3B program. I hope you understand 3A. Let's go for 3B program. So 3B program, we are dealing with threads. Threads are lightweight object in Java program. Lightweight object mean by what? We are executing a process in parallel manner. We are executing the process in parallel manner so that we can able to get the execution in faster manner as well as our time will be reduced. The execution time will be reduced. That is a major benefit of threading concept, multi-threading concept. I will tell you one small example for multi-threading. When you are downloading any bulk file, what happens is from starting some download will happen, in mid some download will happen, and in the last some download process will happen. So parallelly the big file will be get downloaded. So in spite of doing from the starting to ending, a parallel process will happen in middle and the last all the places, so that your download file will be downloaded in very faster manner. So that is one small example for threading. So like that, we are creating multi-thread. So all the multi-threads will do the process in one by one manner. So thread 1 will execute and the parallel time, thread 2 will execute, thread 3 will execute. Like that, one by one, it will just execute in very faster manner, and it will give the results in very fast, and the time complexity, mean by the time of execution for your program will be very less. So that's what the major idea of thread. So here we are having different states of thread. So running state, runnable state, waiting state, okay, thread stopping state. All the states are there actually. So when you are having a thread is in waiting state, it will be ready to run. Okay, so there is a thread life cycle we will tell that you will learn in detail in your OOC subject. OOC theory, you will have that question. That is a very important question in OOC. Thread life cycle we will tell. So according to the thread life cycle, it will create a thread and it will it will make the thread runnable, and then it will go for the waiting state, and it will go for the stop state. All these things it will happen. Now let's see the program question. What the question we are having? 3B. Write a Java program that implements a multi-thread application that has 3 threads. We are creating 3 threads. First thread generates a random integer for every 1 second. Keep in mind, we have to create within a second. Every second it have to generate a random number. Second thread computes the square of number and prints. So whatever the random number generated by the first thread, for that the second thread will just compute the square of the number and prints. Third thread, what it will do? It will just do the cube of the number. Whatever the number it generates by the first thread, the square of the number will be done by the second thread. So cube of the number will be done by the third thread. So you should understand how the 3 threads are doing the process simultaneously. So thread 1, you have to make it for creating random numbers. For example, first thread creates 2. So second thread will do square of that, 2 square 4. Third thread will do 2 cube. Okay. So all these things it will do in simultaneously. So we are just accessing this by creating a package. Let's see the code inside. So what we are doing, the third thread will print the value of the cube of the number. So all these things you know. So all 3 threads we are dealing with. Now let's start the code, the explanation of the code. So package daa.lab, this is our package. Inside the package we are having import static. OCJP is the another package. Keep in mind, OCJP we are having as a package here. So OCJP is the second package. Inside the second package we are having mythread1. So mythread1 is the class. Inside OCJP package we are having mythread1. Inside mythread1 I am just having a random variable, public static int random number. Random number is a variable, integer variable. That is a static variable. Static variable mean by what? Non-changeable. Whatever the value you are having, that will be fixed and it will not be updated further. Okay. So static variable we have to use because every thread will be taking the value and modifying the value. So we have to put the variable as a static variable. So here inside the particular import statement, we are having class thread b1 extends thread. So first class we are making class b1 thread. B1 is the class what you created. Extends thread. Thread is a generic class. Keep in mind, thread is a generic class. In a generic class, we are having synchronized method. With use of thread class, we can able to call notify method. So whatever the method you are seeing here, notify method is a predefined method inside the class thread, and synchronize whatever you are seeing here, that is a method, that is a predefined method inside the class thread, generic class thread. So all these particular methods will be called from the generic class. So we have to access the generic class thread so that only you can able to call those methods. So first one is class thread b1 extends thread we are creating. So with use of this particular access, we are creating a method inside. So run method we are creating. So every thread class having run method. So run method will execute and initiate the thread. So here inside run method, we are just synchronizing the b1. So all 3 threads we are creating. Thread b1, next thread is thread b2, next thread is thread b3. All 3 threads we are creating. All 3 threads has to be synchronized properly. When we created the random number by thread b1, then thread b2 has to do the square of that random number, and thread b3 will do the cube of that random number. So all 3 threads will work and synchronize properly. For that reason, we are using synchronized method. Next to that, inside synchronized method, we are creating the random number. So thread 1 will create the random number, no? So that the thread name is thread b1. Inside the thread b1 class, we are creating the random number. So random number we are accessing. So where we are accessing the random number? From the OCJP package, from my thread 1 class, we are accessing the random number variable. So random number variable, what we are storing, every time it will generate the random number. So 0 plus int of math.random asterisk 100. So math.random is a generic class. Math is a generic class. Dot random is the predefined method from the generic class math. So every time a random number will be generated and that will be multiplied with 100. So this is the way we can able to generate a random number, and this particular random number will be in the limit of 100. For that reason, we are giving 100 as a limit. So every time, whatever the random number we are generating, that will be under the limit of 100. So within 100, we are generating the random numbers. So after this particular process, the random number will be stored here, and we are notifying the next thread. So after completion of this thread, it will just call the notify method to notify the next thread. So notify will call the next thread. So until that, the thread 1 will be under process, thread 2 will be in the waiting state. So it will notify and thread 2 will start execute, and then it will notify the thread 3. Like that, the process will be synchronized properly. So thread 2, what we are second thread what we are creating, thread B2 is a second thread class name. So extends thread is the generic class as I told. Then here we are creating int square because we going to find the square root of the given random number. So how we are doing, we are creating a run method inside the thread B2 class, and we are calling the synchronize method. After this, it have to synchronize with the thread B3. Then next to this, we are just creating a square. Square is the variable. So what we are finding square int. So int, what is this int mean by is typecasting we are doing. So whatever the value we are identifying, that will be in any data type. So here it may be come with string or any float, whatever data type it's giving us output. That data type will be converted to integer, and that will be stored in the square. The same way, whatever the random number is generating, that will be typecasted to integer. Whatever data type it may be, it will be converted to integer, then it will store in the random number. The same way here, the math.pow, yeah.
Sir, link to which you have shared, some students can't hear your voice, it seems, sir.
Is it audible, students? Aman Kumar, is it audible? Aman Kumar, is it audible? Aman Kumar, is it audible? Okay. So thread B2 extends thread. As I told, thread is the generic class. With use of thread, we can able to access the predefined methods called as synchronized and the notify method. So here we are identifying the square root for random number. So random number comma 2. So it will find power. Power is a predefined method that will be called from math. So 2 power 2. So that can be done with use of pow method. Power method, you have to give the variable comma which power you want to identify. I want to give 2 because random number power 2. So that random number comma 2 we are giving. So if you give the random number is 2, 2 power 2, 4 will be generated, and that will be stored in the square. Okay. Then further it will notify the next thread. So thread B3 will be called. So thread B3, what happens? It will just extend the generic class thread. So generic class thread, what happens? It can able to access the predefined method called synchronize method and notify method. In thread 3, B3, what we are doing, we are identifying the cube of the given number. The same process, we are creating a variable named as cube. So cube is equal to int of math.pow random number comma 3. Random number comma 3 mean by random number power 3. So pow method we are using, we are just giving 3. So it will identify the if you are the random number is 2 power 3 it will identify. So 8 will be stored in cube. So it will notify the next thread. So again it will go for generating the random number until identify the square, until identify the cube. Like that the process will be go on. So that are the 3 threads we created in the starting of the program. Now we're going to see what the code written inside the main function. So what the code we wrote inside the main function, let's discuss. So public class thread A1 we are having. Inside the class we are writing the main function. So in the main function, public static void main throws interrupted exception. If any interruption happens, or if anything goes wrongly in doing the process, it will throw a interrupted exception exception to the catch block, and catch block will stop the execution. So it will stop the crash of the software. Okay, so software has to be properly maintained. For that reason, we are using exception handling. So interrupted exception mean by all three threads are generating simultaneously. If there any interruption happens in the generation, it will stop the execution and throw the exception that interruption occurred. Like that, it will show the message and stop the process. Now let's see what's inside the early static void main. So here we are creating a for loop for I is equal to 0, I less than 10, I plus plus. So what does this mean by? We are iterating this entire process for 10 times. So 0 to 10. So 0 to 9, it will iterate the for loop. So first time it will be 0, 1, 2, 3 until 9. So 9 less than 10, it will execute. When it go for 10, 10 less than 10, condition will be false. So the for loop will stop the iteration. Now, inside the for loop, we are creating object for thread B1. Thread B1, we are creating object as B. Thread B1 space B is equal to new thread B1, open parenthesis, close parenthesis, semicolon. What is this mean by? When you are creating object for a class, we are just giving class name space, object name is equal to new class name. So that's what the thing we are doing, no? Class name space, object name is equal to new class name. The same way, thread B1, we are creating object, thread B1 space, B is equal to new thread B1. So B is the object. Now we have to start the first thread. For starting the first thread, we have to give B dot start. Start is the generic method. Keep in mind, start, synchronize, notify all, notify, wait. All these things are predefined methods inside the class thread. These are not user-defined methods. Keep in mind, user-defined mean by your what? Whatever the method you are creating by yourself, and if you are calling the method, that is come under user-defined method. Whatever the method you are accessing from the generic class, that are called as predefined methods. So predefined methods are said to be start, wait, okay, what you are seeing here, wait, and what you've seen in the previous thing, notify, then synchronized, okay. All these things, whatever you are seeing, that are said to be predefined methods, okay. Now let's see, when it's calling b dot start, it will call the thread b1 and execute the statement. So it will execute the statement. So thread b1 will be executed and it will just generate the random number. So that's what it will done when you just doing this. Then what we are doing, we are synchronizing the b and we are just displaying, waiting for a to generate random number. So this one we are doing. So we already started. So the particular thread will generate the random number. After generating, we are just keeping the particular thread in the waiting state. So b dot wait, after generating the random number, it have to go to the waiting state, so that the next thread will do the squaring operation, and further the second thread will go for the waiting state, so that the third thread will do the cubic operation for the same value. So now we are just doing this process and we are making a catch block. If there is interruption in this particular code, it will just print the statement as interruption occurred. Okay, now we are just printing the random number. Now the random number got generated, so we are just displaying the random number. So for example, the random number is 2, so we are just displaying 2. Now the second thread will be start executing. The second thread, we are creating a variable object for the second thread, thread b2 b11 is equal to new thread b2. Now we are starting the second thread, b11 dot start. So what the second thread will do? Second thread will just do this process. What is the process? It will do the square of the given number. So thread b2 extends the thread. As I told, the square root of the particular value what we generated, that will be identified here. As I told, random number value is 2. 2 square, that is 4. 4 will be stored in the square variable. Now what happens? We are just identifying the square that will be stored and that will be displayed here. Okay, the square is whatever the square we are identified, that will be displayed as output here. So again, we have to make the statements here. After calling that particular thread, we have to synchronize the thread, and inside the try block we have to make the statement, waiting for thread B to identify the square value for given random number. So whatever the random number you got as input, that will be displayed here. Now what is the statement? After that, it will go for waiting state, and if there is interruption here, it will just throw the exception to the catch block, and catch block will hold the exception, and finally we are displaying the square root. So square value, mean by if you the random number is 2, it will just display 4 as output. The square is 4, it will display as output here. Now we are going for the third thread. So thread B3 space B33 is equal to new thread of B3. So B33 dot start we are giving. So synchronized B33, we are just synchronizing the third thread, and we are waiting for the third thread to compute the cube value for the random number. So what is the cube value for the random number? 2 power 3, 8. So that 8 will be computed and displayed here as output. So until doing that process, it will go for a waiting state. So after calling the particular thread, it will just execute the thread. After execution, the particular thread will go for a waiting state so that it will do the process and it will call the next thread. So here also we are having catch block to, if any exception happens in this particular try block, that will be handled by this catch block and just display the exception. Okay, so all the three threads having try block and catch block, if there is any interruption, it will just catch the interruption and just display the exception as the output. Otherwise, it will just display the cube part. So 10 times the same process will happen, and we will get 10 different random numbers for that square root and cubic value. Let's execute this code and see the output, what the output will be. So see the output, how it happens. So 10 times we are getting the output. So waiting for thread A to generate the random number. So random number is 52. So thread B to compute the square of the random number 52. So we are getting 2704. Again thread C to compute the cube of random number 52. We are getting the answer as 140608. So this is the first three threads doing the process. Again, let's go for the second iteration. The second iteration, we are getting this 3 execution. Okay, this execution we are getting in the second iteration. So second iteration, the random number is 43. So the square of 43 is 1849, and cube of 43 is 79507. Okay. Next, we are going for the third iteration. The third iteration, this is the process it's doing. The third iteration, the random number is 47, and we are getting the square as 2209, and the cubic value is 103823. Okay. Now the fourth iteration, we are getting this value as a 36 as a random number, and square root as 1296, and 46656 as a cubic value. Like that, we are having 10 values. Like this, we are having 10 times execution we are having. So any doubts in the 3B program, students? 3B program, any doubts? Please ask me.
Import statement, sir. Import.